Hey everybody, welcome to Wednesday Stash, where I share ways to help you keep your food for longer. And happy St. Patrick's Day. I have all my green on. I wanted to share some things to do. What do you do if there's a canning mishap? Things go wrong when you're canning. Well, we're going to go over that, but before we do, I wanted to go over some St. Patrick's Day fun facts with you. So, first, we should really be wearing blue on St. Patrick's Day. So that's why you see I have some blue here. St. Patrick himself would have done pinching on his feast day. We've come to associate Kelly Green. I have my Kelly Green on. We've come to associate Kelly Green with the Irish and the holiday, but his official color, St. Patrick's official color, was blue, a light shade of sky blue. I don't know if that's a little bit darker than sky blue, but the color green only became associated with the big day after it was linked to Irish independence, the Irish independence movement in the late missed that one, 19th century, 17th century. I don't know, that one is not there, but with Irish independence, I don't know if anybody out there knows when Irish independence occurred. St. Patrick himself wasn't Irish. He was born to Roman parents in Scotland or Wales. St. Patrick's Day used to be a dry holiday. Can you imagine? Some people probably couldn't imagine that because it's a feast day. I always wondered that, like we're in the middle of Lent right now, so I'm wondering how people are managing celebrating St. Patrick's Day and they're in the middle of Lent. I don't know. So I'm sure they've managed a way out. But it used to be a dry holiday. But in Ireland, the pubs were closed, but they used to have a big dog show. So the dog show was always held on St. Patrick's Day. New York City's St. Patrick's Day parade has been happening since 1762. I had no idea. So there are pictures of the parade that's always been, that's been going on for a long time. And it's one of the world's largest parades. Last year, of course, it was canceled. That was the first time in the century it was canceled. But that was because of, COVID. So they had to cancel that. Let's see. Chicago literally turns its rivers green on St. Patrick's Day. So green dye. And they get some help from the local plumbers union. They go in somehow. They're able to dump all of that green dye in there. I don't think it's green. They say orange powder is used. So I guess a combination between the orange powder and the water, you have green rivers. Let's see. Some other ones. I thought these were really good. There's a reason for the shamrocks. Okay, shamrocks on St. Patrick's Day. Let's see. How did shamrocks become associated with St. Patrick's Day? According to an Irish legend, the saint used the three-leaf plant, which was not to be confused with the four-leaf clover, as a metaphor for the Holy Trinity when he was first introducing Christianity to Ireland. So that's where the shamrock came from. Now, next, cold weather helped St. Patrick's claim to fame. They're thinking because of the weather, that's why there were no snakes in Ireland, because it was too cold. So it says here, through the Ice Age, the island was too cold to host any reptiles, and the surrounding seas have staved off the invaders ever since. So they think that him driving the snakes out of Ireland was more metaphorical. So other kind of snakes he was getting rid of. There's no corn in that corned beef. Okay, so you see that corned beef. There's no corn in there. That comes from the salts, and you see the peppercorns. The peppercorns that are there as well. So that's the corned beef that we're talking about. But there's no corn in corned beef on St. Patrick's Day. Um, Americans run up quite a bar tab on St. Patrick's Day. That's not a surprise. And you know the official drink for St. Patrick's Day is Guinness. They color it green. Let's see. Trying to see if, there are no female leprechauns. Even though you might see postcards, you might see pictures, there's no female leprechauns. The only male leprechauns who spend their day making and mending shoes, meaning they earned the gold that they were guarding. Only male leprechauns. And the last one is, what does Erin go bra mean? That is a corruption of, let's see, Erin go bra. I can't say what they have written here, but basically Ireland forever. So you have those Irish fun facts. All right. So I hope you're finding a safe, fun and safe way to celebrate this year's St. Patrick's Day. But that would not include, again, canning that corned beef. Yeah, you don't want to can that. You want to eat it, you want to enjoy it, but you do not want to can it. And you might be wondering why. Why can't I can corned beef? The USDA guide, I have one of those here. USDA guide for home canning, fresh meats. So fresh meats like beef, chicken. I have some lamb here. They don't include canning cured meat. So they specifically indicate, the guide's going to specifically indicate, and also other canning resources I'm going to go over, but it's going to indicate fresh meat, like if you're going to can ground poultry or ground meat, you're going to use ground poultry or ground meat. But when it comes to strips and cubes, chunks, you can can bear, you can can beef, lamb, pork, veal, and venison. But there's no mention of ham or corned beef. So the texture of some cured, brined, or corned meat, it's firmer. It's going to be a firmer texture than you would get from fresh meats such as these. Now, if it's firmer, that's going to make the heat that penetrates into the meat more difficult. That means that you would need a longer processing time. So if you use the same processing time for fresh meats for your corned beef, you're going to have underprocessed meat, and that would be a food safety risk. So there aren't any tested recipes out of this guide or other guides, other resources we're going to talk about. There's no tested recipes for meats that have been cured. Adding salt, nitrites, or other antimicrobials that they use for canning, that's going to that will help as far as making pathogens or microbes such as Clostridium botulinum more susceptible to heat, and the required processing time for some cured meats could actually be shorter, but then this would result in an overcooked product. Tested recipes are needed to determine safe canning processes that would yield a high quality product. So right now, if you went to go look for tested recipes for canning cured meats, there aren't any. So I'm sorry, you cannot can your corned beef. It's not recommended. I mean, you can do what you like, but it's not recommended because as food safety, it would be a food safety risk, and your food quality. You wouldn't have good food quality as well. So that's why we keep harping on tested recipe, tested recipe, tested recipe. So that can help you avoid one of the biggest home canning mishaps, and that's what we're talking about, using a tested recipe. So where do you get tested recipes? I showed you the USDA Guide to Home Canning. Tested recipes here. So easy to preserve. That tested recipes are here. Ball Blue Book. Those are tested recipes are in the Ball Blue Book. And there are some other trusted resources out there. Extension publications. You can go to your extension center or you can go online and you can find tested recipes there as well at your extension sites. But get in touch with your Family Consumer Sciences agent and inquire, what are the best sources that I should use? How do I know if something is a tested recipe? You have to be careful. There have been like celebrity chefs. It's been only a few weeks since you had a celebrity chef, and it was quite high profile where he recommended boiling water canning lobster bisque. That's not recommended. So use a tested recipe, and that blogger, that the celebrity chef, if he had used the tested recipe, he would have known that you can't boiling water can lobster bisque. So I'll get off of emphasizing tested recipe. Okay, so we're talking about home canning mishaps. Another mishap. What do you do if you followed that tested recipe? You did everything that you were to do. You processed your jars the correct way, and whether you're boiling water, whether you have foods that were boiling water canned or pressure canned, you did everything that you should have done. You let them process. They cooled, and you went back to check seals. I don't have an unsealed jar, so I have this nice empty jar. But they weren't sealed. You go to check your seals, and it's not sealed. What do? All right, but there are things that you can do. So if you follow the tested recipe and you followed all of the correct processing the way that you should, within 24 hours of starting, you can start all over again. So what does that involve? That means that the jar of food, you're going to empty the contents out of that jar of food, and you're going to do everything that the original recipe called for you to do. So you're going to heat that food back up, and you're going to put it back into clean jars, new lids, because remember, your lids are a one-shot deal. You're not going to use these over and over again. Bands, yes, bands, as long as they're not rusted, dented, they're in good shape, you can use these over and over again, but you need a new canning lid. And the contents, you put it back in the jar, you use a new lid, you go ahead and you cap it, and then you process it according to the original processing method. But remember, to do that, you have to have followed all of the steps in the first place, and it needs to be done within 24 hours. Okay, so what if after you're canning and you realized you messed up? You either didn't follow the right processing method, you didn't make adjustments for altitude. That's part of it also. You didn't use the correct pressure, and the adjustments for altitude would involve you did not use the correct pressure. Well, what do you do? This is under processed food. If you skipped any of those, you have under processed foods. So you have steps that you can take, and it's not going to make a difference if those jars sealed or not. You don't need a lot of heat to seal a jar. So don't look at, oh, my jar is sealed, everything must be okay. Your jars can seal in a hot car. You can buy canning jars, and on your way to transporting them home, you're going to get like a little vacuum. That doesn't mean, your jars, that you have a good seal. So don't go by sealing. Go by your processing time. Time and temperature. That's what's important. So for steps, it doesn't make a difference if it's sealed or if it didn't seal. If you have low acid foods like meat, vegetables, poultry, combinations of those, tomatoes, those type of foods, you need to process within 4 hours. Okay, whether the jar is sealed or not, you want to reprocess within 4 hours, because toxins, bacteria could have grown and toxins could have formed in those jars. So if more than 4 hours have passed, you need to discard the food. It needs to go. Now, you don't have to reprocess, in either case. If you realize that you've done everything right and your jars didn't seal, well, what can you do with the food? You can put it in the refrigerator. I mean, it's cooked food. Handle it just like if you cooked food and you had leftovers. Stick it in the fridge. Use it within a week. Or you can take the contents and you can freeze the contents. If you don't want to use it within a week, you want it for longer, the food can be frozen. You don't have to go through reprocessing. But again, if you did not process correctly, then within 4 hours, you could put it in the refrigerator or you could freeze it. But after that time, you need to discard the food. Now, if you have, say that you didn't process acidified foods correctly or higher acid foods correctly, you have 24 hours to go ahead and repeat that process. But for your low acid foods, you really need to be careful. Do it within 4 hours because you don't want toxins that might have formed in the food to make you sick, or other bacteria that could have formed in the food to make you sick. So follow that 4 hour rule, okay? Again, tested recipes, don't follow steps. Read the recipe carefully to make sure you're doing what needs to be done. The correct time, the correct temperature, adjustments for altitude. You're going to find that all in your tested recipes, okay? Another one I wanted to talk about was what do you do about jars that break during canning? This could be scary. Say you have put the foods in the canner, whether it's a boiling water canner, pressure canner, and you hear, that little explosion. A jar has given in the canner. What do? Don't panic. Allow the processing to complete, leave it alone, let it finish, and carefully, if it's boiling water canner, you're going to, after processing is finished, you're going to remove the jars. Just carefully remove the jars, ideally with your jar lifter. Put it on a cushioned surface, allow it to cool, and then after it's cooled, you've checked for seals, you're going to carefully wash those jars. Just make sure there's no little shards of glass. Even if you did not have any breakage, you still want to do the same thing. Once processing is completed, you're going to remove your bands. You don't want to store with your bands. You store without your bands for a lot of reasons. There's other videos that go over why you don't store with your bands. But you're going to take the jars out. You're going to wash them, dry them, and put them away for storage. If it's a pressure canner, again, same thing. You heard it. Don't turn anything off. Allow it to finish processing. Then, once it's finished processing, your canner has cooled. You don't have any more pressure. You remove your jars. Wait for the contents of the canner to cool completely and carefully remove the contents, the glass, all of that. Be careful. Wash your canner. Get rid of all of that. Wash your canner. Dry it. Put it away. Once your jars have finished processing, they're sealed, they're completely cool, the same thing. You're going to carefully remove those bands and wash your jars, dry them, and put them away. So just because a jar broke, don't panic. It's okay during processing. Now, that's important. That's a reason why you always want to check your jars before you fill them. You want to make sure that you don't have any scratches. You want to check the rim. Make sure there's no chips, there's no nicks. Those are going to be weak spots in the jar. So make sure that your jar is intact and there aren't any defects, because where there are defects, those are weak spots. Those are the spots that can potentially go. Another reason why you never use metal in your jars. So when you're running a wand, running for air bubbles, don't use a metal spoon. Don't use a knife. rubber spatula, plastic knife, your jar measure if you have the really neat ones where you can measure your headspace on one side, you have your rounded wand on the other, you can run that in your jar. That's plastic. But never use metal in your jars because metal causes scratches, or it could even chip, and those are weak spots in the jar. So take care of your canning jars. Okay? And that's it for this week's Wednesday Stash, where I share ways to help you keep your food for longer. Join me next week. We're going to talk about canning jars, okay? And different size canning jars. And have you ever seen a half gallon size canning jar? And did you know if you can can something in that or not? We're going to talk about that on the next Wednesday Stash. So again, thank you for joining me. I'm going to check for questions. I normally never do this, but I don't see any questions, so I'm assuming everybody's good. In the comments box, I might drop some items. There were some things that I wanted to link to for you. But right now, I'll be honest, I can't remember what I wanted to link. I wanted to drop in that comments box for you. But join me next week, and thanks for being a part of Wednesday Stash.